First panelist is Robert Borchelt. He's with Cummins, and he's the Director of Manufacturing IT Systems and Controls. Please welcome Robert to the stage to talk about his MES installation. Thank you.
As Greg said, there's a lot of technologies, impacting production, impacting manufacturing these days. Cummins is a conservative company in many ways, but we have a fairly demanding business model, so it pushes us toward things like virtualization of our servers, a lot of analytics, et cetera, and I'll talk a little bit about those things. We are using some mobile platforms where we need them, et cetera. I wouldn't say we're quite on the leading edge of that stuff, but we try to at least make sure we use the appropriate technologies where our business drives us. And I think that's the key point to understand, is that you have to know what the technology brings to the users to really understand how to best apply it. Using it for its own sake isn't why we do it, right? So what I wanted to start off this morning with was a little bit of a story of how we deployed a pretty standard technology, manufacturing execution systems, in a common way in our business, and obtained some pretty substantial results that have convinced us this is a good program for us to roll out to all of our plants globally. So if you're not familiar with Cummins, we're a company about $18 billion, I think is what we announced on Tuesday this year. So the numbers in this presentation are a little bit dated from last year, but when I put it together, we hadn't had our fourth quarter earnings announcements yet, so couldn't put out anything publicly at that point. We make probably best known for our engines, diesel and natural gas engines, but also gensets and all of the components that go into those products, turbochargers, fuel systems, after treatment systems, filtration products, and of course we have an extensive dealer and distributor network that we provide service to our customers through. And typical Fortune 500 company, about 40, 50,000 employees scattered all over the globe. So our project, I guess if you want to call it a project, that we refer to as our next generation manufacturing execution system, really started maybe 10 years ago with the realization that we had been putting different solutions each time we built a new plant, thinking we could do it a little better than we had previously. And we did a project to determine a common set of requirements to be able to develop and then deploy in multiple sites, realizing that that would be a better approach financially. So we selected a product called a FlexNet as the base system, developed our solution on top of it with the support of our partners, Tata Consulting Services. And our first deployment was in a mid-range engine plant in Darlington in the United Kingdom. We, as I said, called it NGMES. Funny how names stick. 10 years later, it's still Next Gen MES in everybody's mind, but that's okay. Gives it a nice ring. The reason we selected that plant, there are multiple factors, but for the program, it gave us a good case study. It's a high proliferation plant, somewhere on the order of 20,000 active shop orders, moderate volume, but at the time, in early 2008, wait for it, in early 2008 was running at capacity, 3 shifts a day, as many days a week as we could convince the operators to be in there. A lot of demanding customers in Europe and export markets globally. But we had a legacy system there that had been in place for over 20 years. The gentleman in the photograph on the lower right had contacted me when we started the project and said, Bob, I really want to be part of this project because I want to retire. And that is him pushing the button to release the first engine under NGMES at the plant. He did retire about 6 weeks after we went live. He felt he had done his part and in good conscience could leave. The prior system, it was a site-unique solution. We were buying parts off of eBay because the vendors had long gone out of business. And we had our if John Burns gets hit by a bus plan, but luckily didn't have to implement it. That's John in the photo there. Obviously, support costs were increasing. There was a lot of business risk associated with having a solution that dependent on one individual and obsolete parts. The good news was we were very successful with the implementation. We were able to achieve what we'll publicly admit to, 25% throughput improvement. As always, you can say your mileage may vary, but the actual improvement was better than 25%, but that's all I'll admit to publicly. We also saw significant quality improvements, order of magnitude better results in terms of our defect rates that were seen by our customers. So a lot of enthusiasm. Unfortunately, the global economy collapsed shortly after we implemented, so I find it particularly interesting that typically when volumes drop in our plants, we see our quality numbers worsen because you have less product to, spread your mistakes out across, if you will. We actually saw this order of magnitude improvement during a time of rapid decline in volumes, and so it was even more significant to us that we were able to achieve those kind of gains. Even though there was a global downturn, we couldn't afford to not continue to invest in our strategic growth initiatives. So the next plant that we implemented this into was one of our newest joint ventures in China, and the scope was significantly different. It was a plant that was about 5 times larger in terms of its production volume of the original plant that we implemented into. And when at capacity, will actually be our largest volume plant in our network. The advantage of global deployment immediately became obvious because the cost to implement, even though it was a 5 times the capacity plant, was about half of what it was in the initial plant. Not surprising. Initial implementations are typically more expensive than the subsequent ones. We continued to see that trend, again, with a joint venture plant that we implemented in India, early part of 2011. And the volume was similar to our first implementation, but the cost dropped to about a quarter of that initial implementation. And the other significant part about this particular project was it was one of those put it on hold when the 2008 downturn came because economic uncertainty. About the time we got all the equipment that had been purchased from the system integrator boxed up, sent to the warehouse, packaged so that the project could be restarted. We hadn't quite gotten the last crates there when they decided, oh no, I think it's okay, let's go ahead. So we had to ship everything back to the system integrator and restart the project. When we went live, we came up to full production within about I'd say 10 to 12 week time frame because of the volume pressures that we didn't think were going to be there but had developed. So we're in process of actually implementing a third plant in this particular joint venture, literally across the parking lot from this TCL2 that was described in this slide. Another thing that I sometimes get asked questions about is, the first ones we went into were engine plants. So what about your other facilities at Cummins? Are you planning to use this solution there as well? How much will be able to be reused? Our fourth implementation was at our fuel systems plant in Wuhan, China. And obviously there's quite a bit difference in size and scale from a fuel pump to a diesel engine. But the code that we developed, our common solution, was actually reused, I'd say 85–90% as is. We, by design, have some what we call plant customizable objects for the routing decisions and talking to customized equipment, et cetera. So those things were unique for the plant. But the majority of our business process structure and how we actually run an assembly line, that was all the same and capable of being supported with simply configurations inside the solution. Again, we continue to see drops in implementation costs. I put 10% on this slide. The actual costs so far are less than that, but we still have additional lines to bring under the program in that plant, so I just kind of swagged a number out there to show the order of magnitude. So our plans for 2010, obviously in 2008, we had big plans for rollout after that initial one, and things got changed a bit when the economy tanked. But we have over 10 implementations planned for this year, including one that I'm traveling to tomorrow morning in Houston, I saw in the video this morning somebody mentioning they were in the oil and gas market. Encourage you to go to our land-based oil and gas center of excellence in Houston if you get a chance. That's where I'm going tomorrow. We're implementing our NGMES solution there, and it's a considerably different production environment than a typical mid-range engine plant would be. But again, we're controlling the business process, the quality processes, and the applications going in really with no modifications because of the configurability we've built into it. So the idea of a scalable MES solution is realizable. And the results that you can see from the use of the information gathered by the MES through analytics, through making sure that your operations folks know where the blocked and starved data is pointing them, can create those kinds of benefits that I described, 25% or better throughput improvement and significant quality improvements. So I think I went the wrong direction there, my apologies. In our network, the way that we do our analytics is we have local reports on a local server so they can get good response time. It is a mirror of our production database. We don't want to impact production by doing a nasty query on a production database. So we have a mirror that we do our operational reporting off of. And then we have a central data warehouse that allows that cross-plant reporting and the executive and leader level analysis to be done. The rapid startup of new plants has been important to us because as a company we are growing significantly, so having a common solution that we can deploy is important. Last thing I wanted to leave with you was kind of a counter message or being a bit argumentative with our theme here just to get the conversation flowing a little bit. It's my contention that IT systems, which we spend a lot of time talking about at a forum like this, they don't deliver transformational results. Now, I say that because in reality, it's the people that deliver those results. The IT systems give us the right information at the right time so that we can make the right decisions. Like so many other things that we buy, they're tools that we use to carry out our work. So the important thing is to bring in a solution that can enable transformational change, whether that be an MES, advanced analytics, mobile platforms, 3D virtualization or visualization. It's all about making these things up here make the right decisions and work better to get the results that we want. So that's my parting comment for this morning. And Greg, ready for your next speaker.